Check out our streaming schedule for this week. We stream every single day on this channel talking about all things sports history. And now with college basketball season really getting in the swing of things, we are doing a lot of college basketball streams, commentating the action as we get one step closer to March Madness. So join me every night as we call the best of college basketball. And now, on with our feature presentation. Here's a trivia question for you before we start the video off. Who was the very first quarterback in NFL history to win AP Offensive Rookie of the Year? Who was the very first signal caller to be deemed by the voters and by the Associated Press as the best offensive rookie in the game? It's bizarre, because Ben Roethlisberger won the award in 2004, and he was the second guy to do it. The first guy to do it? It was a guy nearly 3.5 decades before him. It was this man right here, Buffalo Bills quarterback Dennis Shaw. And I think it's safe to say that when you win Offensive Rookie of the Year, there were tons of high hopes and expectations for you. I mean, of all the rookies to get drafted on that side of the ball, you were deemed the best. So surely, you could keep that up, right? Winning Offensive Rookie of the Year is usually a good sign they're going to have a great career in football and maybe even wind up in the Hall of Fame someday, with legends like Earl Campbell, Franco Harris, Tony Dorsett, Marshall Faulk, Curtis Martin, and Marcus Allen all winning this award, just to name a few. This has to be a good sign, right? However, that couldn't be further from the truth, because despite a solid rookie season as you're watching right now, Dennis Shaw turned out to be a massive bust, being one of just a few players that you can say was a bust, despite literally being named the best offensive rookie in his class at the time. Dennis Shaw's tenure in Buffalo was very rocky and was not very good, and perhaps no game exhibited that more than the one we're about to talk about today. Because a quarterback is meant to be the leader of the team and is meant to elevate the guys around him. Under no circumstances should a quarterback throw his team under the bus. And yet, Dennis Shaw thought it was a good idea to alienate the entire team and do just that. He didn't get a bus, he got a freaking 18-wheeler and then put it in reverse and ran them over again. Because after one particular outing against the Minnesota Vikings, he told the world, "I wasn't the reason why we lost and played poorly. It was everyone else. My team around me stunk." And this is the story behind the worst moment of Dennis Shaw's career, and the Bills quarterback who hated his teammates and was not afraid to show it. Before I talk about everything that Shaw did, make sure that you hit that like button down below, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we post on the channel. We post every single day about the weird and the wacky history of the NFL, and every like and subscriber helps as we inch closer and closer to 70,000 subscribers. So I would really appreciate your support in advance as we try and get there. Thanks in advance for liking and subscribing, and with that in mind, let's talk about one of the worst teammates that you'll ever have. Before I talk about the actual incident in question and the game that led to this, we need some context to understand how Buffalo's season was going up until this point, because it was a mix of good and bad. It's October 3rd, 1971. It's week 3 of the NFL season, and we've got an inter-conference game in Metropolitan Stadium, and the first ever meeting, in fact, between these two teams, the Buffalo Bills and the Minnesota Vikings. For the main team in our story, the Bills, this is a big game, because as you can tell through some of these lowlights, they're not off to the best of starts, as they find themselves at 0-2 through the first 2 weeks. At the same time, no one, not a single team in NFL history, had ever made the playoffs starting 0-3. So for Buffalo, this game was a must-win, because making up ground in a 14-game season after failing to win anything until mid-October would be almost impossible. However, even though Buffalo dropped their first 2 games, as you can tell from these clips, losing 49-37 to the Dallas Cowboys and losing 29-14 to the Miami Dolphins, they weren't necessarily playing bad football. Buffalo got dealt the crappiest of all hands when the schedule came out in 1971, with their first 4 games being against the defending NFC champion, a 10-4 team, a 12-2 team, and the defending Super Bowl champion. No team had ever had a tougher start to the season on paper based on the previous year's results than Buffalo had in 1971, because the NFL had it out for them for some reason, based on the design of that schedule. No one actually expected the Bills to defeat the Cowboys and the Dolphins. And to be fair, they did not do that. You can clearly see that. However, they did not play poorly. The 37 points scored against Dallas were shocking, to the point where the Buffalo fans gave them a standing ovation after the game, even despite the loss. And they were right in it against Miami until the fourth quarter. At the end of the day, 0-2 is 0-2, and the standings don't lie or account for moral victories. But there were a lot of bright spots to take away from Buffalo's start to the season, even if the outcome of the game didn't go the way that they would like. And a big reason why Buffalo was off to a solid start offensively in 1971, even despite their 0-2 start, was because of this man right here, Dennis Shaw, as in the reigning AP Offensive Rookie of the Year. After winning the award following a season where he finished 7th in the league in completion percentage and 6th in passing yards, it seemed as though Shaw was looking better than he did last year, seeing as he threw for 4 touchdowns against the eventual Super Bowl champion Dallas Cowboys and threw for 353 yards with a passer rating of 101.1. Through the first 2 weeks, Shaw's numbers were looking awfully impressive. He was completing 66% of his passes with 507 yards, 4 touchdowns, and a passer rating of 82.8. For some perspective on how good Shaw was to start off 1971 initially, Shaw had the second most yards in football, only behind Virgil Carter of the Cincinnati Bengals, and he had the most touchdowns in football with 4. Literally only one quarterback to start off 1971 had 500 yards and 4 touchdowns through the first 2 games, and that was none other than the reigning AP Offensive Rookie of the Year, Dennis Shaw. If he could keep that momentum up going into Week 3 against the vaunted Minnesota Vikings defense, then maybe, just maybe, Buffalo could get its first win of the season, and we might be talking about Shaw as one of the best quarterbacks in football. That did not happen. That's where the praise stops. Because do you want to know how a man destroys his reputation in 60 minutes? Do you want to know how a man goes from an acclaimed quarterback and one of the best in football and a guy that you would want on your team to a man that you wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole and a guy that you think stinks and goes from one extreme to the other overnight? Well, let me introduce you to what's about to happen during the Bills-Vikings game, both on and off the field. Because this game is a prime example of everything that a quarterback should not do. Want to know how you get your teammates and the fans and every expert to hate on you? This is how. On the field, the game was a disaster. Buffalo had been solid offensively for the first 2 weeks, having scored more points than any team in the AFC. But on this day, their offensive luck would run out, as they would lay a goose egg, getting shut out and losing by a final score of 19-0. And for Dennis Shaw, after a great start to the season, as you can probably tell through these lowlights and the fact that the Bills scored 0 points, this game was anything but that. Shaw finished the game with 67 yards passing, which gets even worse when you realize that he took 7 sacks, including 1 for a safety in the end zone, and he lost 59 yards on those sacks. So in reality, Shaw finished the game with 8 net passing yards. That's it. Combine that with his no touchdowns and 2 interceptions, and Dennis Shaw finished the game with a passer rating of 26.5, which is worse than if he did nothing but spike the ball into the ground on every single play. Shaw's passer rating took a nosedive after this performance, I'll put it like that. The Bills had just 64 yards of offense all day. They turned it over 3 times, and everything about this game for Buffalo was ugly with a capital U. Was Dennis Shaw the only reason why the Bills lost? Absolutely not. But was he a big reason why they lost? Oh, you bet. There aren't too many universes out there in alternate dimensions where a quarterback can lead his team to 0 points and not share at least some of the blame. So on the field, this game did not go according to plan for Shaw. But now, it was time for the man of the hour, Dennis Shaw, to meet with the press. What went wrong? You know the golden rule of being a quarterback and being the de facto leader of the team. When you play well and when your team wins, it's about we. And when you don't play well and your team loses, it's about me. And a reporter asked Shaw an absolute layup of a question that should have been a non-story and would not be remembered more than half a century later if he answered it the way that every other quarterback that ever played the sport would have. A reporter asked him, "Did the Vikings zone press coverage bother you as much as it appeared?" And if Shaw said, "You've got to give credit to the Vikings defense. They had a great game, and they gave us fits, and we had no answers for it," then this is a non-issue. If Shaw said, "We've heard so many great things about this defense and the talent they've got all around the field, that you can see why with how they play today," then this is a non-issue. But Dennis Shaw decided not to do that. Instead, he said, in no uncertain terms, "I played well. The rest of my team stunk. I'm out there busting my buns every night. Tell your old man to drag my receivers and offensive line up and down the field for 60 minutes. Because Shaw decided to answer the question by saying, "No. If I had time to throw, we could have completed more passes to the outside receivers. I had time early in the game, but the guys were dropping them." That's right. Dennis Shaw was out there putting his entire team on blast, saying, "I did enough to win the game. My offensive line stunk, and when they didn't stink, my receivers stunk." And just in case there was any ambiguity and any confusion, a reporter asked a follow-up question, saying, "Do you think the game might have gone differently if the receivers had not dropped some of those passes?" And Shaw responded by saying, "Yes, I do." Seriously. Can you imagine a guy like Joe Burrow or Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes, even when Tony doused his hands in butter before every game, saying anything along those lines? Way to go, Dennis. Way to freaking go. Again, the quarterback is supposed to be the leader of the team. He's supposed to be a guy you can rally around and you can get behind. And if you're a quarterback to do that and act like an individual and say in no uncertain terms that the rest of his team stunk, look, the receivers may have dropped some passes and the offensive line may have missed some blocks, but you're still the one responsible, and you didn't have that great of a game yourself. You threw 2 interceptions. You had 8 net passing yards. Don't act like you were this perfect angel who could do no wrong. For you to not shoulder one iota of the blame, and for you to drive a bus, superglue your teammates to the road, run them over, then put the bus in reverse, run them over again, then do it a third time, and then leave the bus parked in that spot so they have no room to breathe afterwards? I mean, good luck rallying behind that guy and playing for him. One writer jokingly said after those comments that there are rumors that Dennis Shaw was considering filing a suit for non-support against his teammates. But honestly, I believe it. After those comments, it honestly wouldn't shock me if that crossed his mind and if he wondered whether he had legal standing to do that. That's how out of pocket and out of line those comments were. And it's going to come as no surprise when I say that after the game between the Bills and the Vikings, everything sort of fell apart for the Bills and for Dennis Shaw. Despite the great offensive starts of the season, Buffalo actually finished the 1971 campaign with the worst offense in football, averaging just 13.1 points per game. The Bills went 1-13, finishing the year with the worst record in football. And to top it all off, Dennis Shaw ended the season by throwing a whopping 26 interceptions on just 11 touchdowns, with a touchdown-to-interception ratio somewhere in the ballpark of 2-5, which is abysmal. The 26 picks was the most in football, and he never started another game after the 1972 season. From Offensive Rookie of the Year to flaming out in that short of a time period. Job well done. Look, when you're the quarterback of a team, there are certain things that you should not do under any circumstances. And one of them is to say that you played well and throw the rest of your team under the bus by saying that no one could block and that no one could catch the ball. If you're the leader of a team, it's hard for guys to follow you and rally around you if you're just going to bash them at every opportunity, especially when you yourself did not play well. This game against the Vikings in 1971 was the beginning of the end for Shaw, and the writing was on the wall after everything that happened both on and off the field on this day. Because on this October day, when it came to Dennis Shaw, no one circles the wagons, then takes the wagons and runs over his own teammates with it, like the Buffalo Bills starting quarterback. Be sure to like and subscribe if you have not done so already, as it helps the channel out a lot, and check out my other channels, JG8 for the history of college football, JG7 for the history of baseball, and JG9 News, where we talk about all things happening in the NFL. Join me every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, where we'll play live NFL trivia for cash prizes. And make sure to join me live as we're on stream just about every single day. And thanks to all our Patreon members and our YouTube members for helping out the channel. See how you become a member and show your support financially in the description down below.